Hi there. Welcome to Infinite Stories. This is the podcast where we sit down and interview everyday people just like you and me. This is your host, Mitchell Vine, and boy, do we have an incredible story for you. Let's jump into this week's interview. Why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you, Kyle?
Yeah, so I'm Kyle Kleber. I am the video production team lead at a church in Northwest Arkansas. I'm a father of two. I have a great wife named Heather. We've been married for over 14 years now. I'm a drummer. I love music. That is, if not my biggest passion, besides telling stories. Man, I love music. And I love golf. Thankfully, I've got both my kids involved, so we try to do that every weekend.
Nice.
And ultimately, I'm a child of God. So, yeah.
Man, so many questions that I already have from the get-go, but I'll have to hold on to them for now so we can actually get into the story. So what are some of your earliest memories as a kid? What did it look like at the beginning of your story?
Yeah, so I remember I was born in Southern California, and some of the early things I remember are like negative things. We moved at the tail end of '94, and I was 7. So basically, beyond that, a few years, like I had some, and this is where we'll get into my deeper story, but had some significant eye issues. But what I remember is we were on the back of my parents', or I was on the front of my parents' boat at a lake out there, and I just remember saying like the wind was really bothering my eyes. And I remember that. I also remember that big earthquake of '94. We were in a rental house about to move to Northwest Arkansas. And I do remember that. I remember my parents waking me up and just some of the news. But that's, and this is a funny thing. I don't know if you can see up behind me, but the Mighty Duck. Before we moved was the first year the Ducks were a team. And my dad, we had it was like a father-son kind of church thing that we would go to. And I remember one night we were driving and we passed the exit. So even though I'm 7, I know which exit is which. And my dad surprised me going to an LA Kings versus Anaheim Mighty Ducks game. So Gretzky was on the Kings. I don't remember much about the game or the score, but I remember that. I remember those pretty vivid. So yeah, I would say those are probably my earliest memories.
Man. You've got a good memory, man. I'm impressed.
I'm going to tell you, my wife hates that about me. I
feel like that would be the other way around, that they would appreciate that.
Well, I think it probably does, but also I don't forget things, so I think that can kind of backfire too if she hopes that I forget. But I mean, those are the earliest. I mean, there's obviously way more memories, but those are the earliest.
Man, that's pretty good. So then, can you, with your fantastic memory, do you remember maybe your first time interacting with sin or understanding what right and wrong was?
I think I'll have to jump to when I accepted Christ, because I think that'll kind of help. So my parents, we were going to EB Free, which was Chuck Swindoll's church out in Southern California. And so I was very early on brought up in the church. And I remember there was we were in the bank drive-through of a bank out in Diamond Bar, California. And I do remember this, sitting in the back of the car saying, "Hey, Mom, will you lead me through the prayer?" So I know God called me, and that was at age 5. So very early on. And so I would say, I think that probably shaped me knowing right from wrong faster, if that makes sense, because there wasn't this, there was this, the Holy Spirit was within me, helping me like, hey, you shouldn't do this. But I mean, when you're a young kid, I would think, probably hitting your sibling, probably talking back to your parents, being that early as a believer, that's probably what would be, just disobedience, just selfishness. That's we're all selfish. That's how we're designed, is to think about ourselves. And so taking a toy, that would be my first probably like I guess memory of probably something I did, whether it be hitting my brother or saying something back to my parents. I don't know that this is probably funny, but I don't know that it's sin, but it's not doing the right thing. I remember very early on, we hadn't moved from Southern California yet, and my mom had pulled a fresh sheet of cookies out of the oven, and she said, "Hey, come over and smell this." And I reached up to smell, and I put my chin right on that hot cookie sheet, and I have a scar tissue like line right under here.
Oh
And so
man.
that wasn't necessarily disobedience, but it was, hey, it's a reminder of, hey, that's something you shouldn't do,
Mm.
and you have consequences when you, there are things you
Did she
don't.
feel bad and give you a cookie right after that, or?
That I don't remember, probably because I was in so much pain. So, but, I mean, it's crazy. It's a reminder. I can feel it is as smooth as you. It's just crazy. It is just crazy.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Man, that's amazing that you have like I really do consider that to be a very interesting gift that God has given you with memory. Because if
Yeah.
you were to ask me remotely anything from my childhood, I'd be like, maybe here and there, but
Yeah.
really nothing much at all. And I don't know if that's by choice or that's just by
Well,
ignorance.
what's funny though is that to this point, there's only been 2 positives. So,
So far.
memories have been negative. So I don't know. But yeah, yeah.
Well, let's see. Let's see what happens next in the story. So, how about early kindergarten through middle school? Any good memories or anything stick out to you of plot points in your story? Anything changed, maybe? Any conflict?
Well, I would say, I mean, the biggest thing now, and this is where what's interesting is I have to share this now, but probably, maybe 8 years ago, I would have completely omitted this part. But
Hmm.
this is where I've learned it. So I'm going to have to go here because this really has shaped me, if that makes
Okay.
sense. And so
Yeah.
when I was 5, and I don't remember all of this. Obviously, some of it's from my mom reminding me,
Hmm.
but when I was 5, she noticed like my left eye was red, and she said, "Hey, we need to take you to the doctor." So they ran me to an optometrist, just like your normal doctor,
Hmm.
and don't know the name, don't know who they were, but they just wrote it off and said, "Hey, he's got pink eye, take these drops." Now, um, how they just wrote it off, I don't know, but went home. 2 weeks later, it had cleared up, the redness was gone. And my mom said, "Hey, well, let me just check how you're able to see." And so she covered my right eye and she said, "What do you see?" And I said, "Nothing."
Hmm.
And so that part I have heard from her. Like I don't remember that, but from that point on, they rushed me to an ophthalmologist. And there's probably bits and pieces of the story that I'm gonna miss, but basically they determined that I had a fully detached retina. Which
Wow.
probably could have been caught, and I'll get to why I say probably, but again, that's just speculation. But no trauma, no family history, nothing. And so that started a process of, okay, 5 years old, permanent damage to the optic nerve, zero growth. So you need to wear a prosthetic. So think seashell kind
Hmm.
of deal. They form it to your existing globe and your socket, and you wear it so that not only it looks normal, more normal, but you have to wear it to keep your bone structure growing. So basically, that happened at age 5. So that's probably right about kindergarten age. And so, I remember that it's uncomfortable. It bothers me. I'm more self-conscious. It doesn't look forward, so kids are unkind. That kind of stuff. I remember that. Uh,
Hmm.
and so, as you're talking about, like, what did kindergarten, first grade look like? I mean, it drastically changed because I know there were, I think, times when I was in sports, but once this happened, like, they were like, "Hey, he needs to stop because he's only got one eye." And
Hmm.
so, at that point, we were open and honest still as a family with that. And so I remember in first grade, playing soccer out in the field, just for recess, and obviously I'm not a seasoned athlete because one, you're what, 6, I guess,
Hmm.
7, and I just remember wanting to play goalie, getting drilled in the face, and it hurt. I mean, there's just stuff I remember about that, and so, I mean, that started shaping me because I knew probably early on that I was like, okay, I can't play sports, but man, I
Hmm.
love sports,
Hmm.
and so. My mom reminds me, like at age 3, like I was in front of the TV watching racing, IndyCar, whatever, basketball, football, and I was naming all the players, naming all the drivers. Just I knew a lot of information about sports. And so when you talk about kind of things that are shaping me and who I was, like this eye problem really kind of shifted focus of, okay, I'm not probably ever going to play because doctors tell me not to, but man, I want to find a way to be involved with sports. Don't know what that looks like. I'm so little. But, you know, that's, I would say kindergarten, first grade. I mean, that was, you know, at that point I was wearing, I got my first pair of glasses at 8 months. So I didn't have great eyesight. And so, you know, I would say that just kind of what kindergarten and first grade looked like. It was, I like sports, but I wasn't playing them. And maybe there were, I do remember, I think my parents said, when I was either on T-ball or something, I either ran backwards or I ran and got the ball after I hit it. So maybe it was better that I didn't play sports.
But it sounds like you're good at golf now, though. So it played.
Oh yeah. I am not tour pro ready, but
Not yet.
you know, I can definitely handle myself on the golf course. So yeah, I would say that was probably the majority of stuff that started to shape me. I did find Christ, and I don't remember the order. I don't know if my eye issue happened first, then God called me to himself, and I accepted him and chose to follow him, or if vice versa. But I know that, and we'll talk more about this, but like bitterness and anger and came into my life with the issues, but I never questioned whether he was real or not, if that makes sense. And so I feel like whatever the order was, it happened early on, because I would feel like anger and bitterness could have taken over, and I would have found some really unhealthy coping mechanisms, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did that transfer to middle school then? What did you so identity-wise? Yeah, so
we moved to Arkansas when I was 7. And what's funny is, huge hockey fan. So before we moved, went to that game, and I was hooked. So moved to Rogers in a rental until we got our house in Bentonville, and it's hilarious. You know, you wouldn't think this is front page newspaper worthy in the early 90s, but us playing street hockey in Bentonville, Arkansas, we're making the front page of the Daily Record, and my mom has, you know, copies of that. You're like, that's interesting. Some kids playing street hockey making front page news. It's either really slow for news in Arkansas, or this is something that's just that out of the blue. But moved here, finished first grade in Rogers, finished second grade in Bentonville, and I'm in the backyard playing catch with my brother and my mom. And so I'm 9, and I keep missing the ball. Just keeps hitting me. And my mom's like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. There's these things that are kind of blocking my vision. And so she immediately rushed me to an office here where, thankfully, oddly enough, one of our global workers at Fellowship now, he was the doctor there, saw me. And I do remember this. So we talk about memories, and so far they've been bad. So just I remember him sitting back after the bright lights and all that kind of stuff. And he looked at my mom and he said, okay, we need to stop and pray. And so she burst into tears, and I'm like, what's going on? And so basically another detached retina, and I need emergency surgery to repair it. And so, long story short, go see a specialist about 30 minutes south of us. He confirms it, and then a couple days later, we're driving down to Little Rock for, and I don't know the words, I always say FDA, but I don't know if that's true, but basically it wasn't like fully approved yet. Like, I know somebody who just had this surgery last week, and he's back to work on Monday. But back in 1995, that's not how it was for me. And so have this surgery in Little Rock. They have to drive me home, and I have to be down for 6 weeks wearing a patch. And so for me, I can't see out of my left eye. And now I have as a patch on my right eye. But what am I going to do? So for 6 weeks during the summer, I'm down. And even more so, life dramatically changes because my vision's really bad. So I'll try to be quick because I can talk. But basically, have that surgery.
Talk how you want.
At some point, I have cataract surgery, and that actually was a good thing because when you have cataract surgery, they remove your lens and put a new one in. So I saw 21,000 before cataract surgery. After cataract surgery, saw 20/50.
Wow.
So dramatically different.
Mm-hmm.
But still, for me, I was homeschooled for a couple years then just to kind of recoup. And then ended up going back on the tail end of 4th grade into 5th grade into public school. And I just remember I had to have giant print books so that I could see.
Yep.
And so I don't know if that was before cataract surgery, after. That's the kind of, stuff I don't necessarily know dates. But I would say like I say ridicule, the picking on, that was still there. Wear glasses, you're going to get picked on. That's just weird. But, the prosthetic never would fit properly, so it kind of always would look in. So, that kind of stuff. And then you're using a big book, which, for the most part, thankfully, like I wasn't super self-conscious, but I can, so, but even, and then at that point, no sports whatsoever. Like you can't get hit now. Like you can't even just play for fun is what doctors were saying. And so I always had to wear glasses for protection. And that's 5th grade. So 6th grade, middle school, that's when it is for us. And same idea. I mean, I'm wanting to play, but then I'm not playing. And kids are like, why, wussy. Let's just say that's the word they used.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, and thankfully at that point, and that's where, when I look back now, God was putting things in my life that were going to be long lasting versus, athletics. But going into 6th grade, you have to try out for music. You have to have a fine art. And so my mom told me this, I don't know, recently, that it was actually my grandma who took me, because my parents were out of town, and so took me to the middle school in 5th grade to, figure out what instrument you want to be a part of. And when I tell this story, I mean no disrespect, but this is just my thing. So go through all the things. My lips don't do the mouthpiece right, can't do the reed. Plus, I thought it was gross. I think I probably gagged for all I know.
Yeah.
And then do the drums, whatever, and then also do the flute. And the guy goes, "Hey, man, I think you have natural rhythm. I can guarantee I think drums would be great, but also your lips are great for the flute." And I was like, "No, I am not doing the flute.
I'm not being known for that.
Man. No way am I going to play the flute. Drums 100%. So started learning that in band in middle school and got my first drum kit in 7th grade and 8th grade, ended up, so I'm not wanting to jump too far ahead past middle school, but anyways, found music, and I didn't know then how important that would be to me, how influential that would be to me. But all throughout even my musical journey, I know God's been present. So, like I'll jump ahead a little bit. High school was no different. Same thing. Why aren't you playing sports? So afraid, you wuss, that kind of stuff. On band, in drumline, on the golf team. Doing things that I can do. To an extent, like half the time now, I can't see where the ball goes, and so I either need my son or the person I'm playing with say, "Hey, where'd that go?" I don't have any idea, and I don't have a live TrackMan, which would be great, but don't have that.
That would be.
Anyways, back to band. Like I was center snare for 2 years, leading the percussion in high school, and although marching band was not my dream to be a part of, it was necessary. I say necessary evil, but I had to be in marching band to be able to be in concert band, and I wanted to be in concert band so I could play drum set at the basketball games. So it was kind of I had to be a part of it. But when you march, you wear those plumes, and you get docked if your head moves. I have no line of sight on the left, and have lost a lot of my peripheral down here on my right side. Well, I am center, but I also need to make sure I'm in line with all my other snares and make sure I'm marching in the right spot. And I know I would turn my head. I would have to. I'd have to know where I was. But, and this is where I know God was. There's we never got docked points for plumes moving. Like a lot of times we in our percussion, get first percussion or whatever they would call it at the competitions. My band, a lot of people from high school still don't know my story. And I'll, as we get farther, and I'll explain why I wouldn't share this, but no one in Siloam knows my story. I stopped telling after in Bentonville because we thought maybe people knowing is also causing more of the problem. Maybe being very open about this is what's causing the issue. So didn't say a word in high school. But I also, I couldn't read music really well. This is almost like the movie Drumline, but a real life story. Like I would first year I played bass drum, second year, third year snare, and I would listen to what other the other snare drummers would do. Even though I'm center snare, I'm leading percussion. I'm listening to what they're doing, and I would hear it, and then I would play it. Versus, I hated the moments where he'd come to me first and say, okay, hey, play it, unless I really knew it, because I wasn't great at reading music. I'm better now, but then I just wasn't into it. I didn't do all region. I didn't do all state, all that bands. Like I said, I was there so that I could play drum set. But I could see God now. I mean, just easily could have docked points and lost us, and then they'd be like, why do you keep turning your head? Just I wasn't telling people. So anyways, I could see him all throughout high school, even though there was, frustrations and things with certain people, that just, it wasn't great, but I was able to play drums at multiple churches that I was a part of. I was a good student. So, obviously I was focused on that, playing drums, playing golf. I wasn't the greatest golfer, so I ended up stopping doing that early on. I was doing too many things. If I would have stuck with golf, I probably would have gotten better. But anyways, I mean, all that to say, I could see, looking back now, I can see things that God was laying in my path and guiding me through to where I am now. And so I was able to experience like mission trips to Northern Ireland twice to play drums for a college mission trip. And then I was able to find one of my good friends who needed a drummer on an album. So I was able to record my first album in high school, and I'm actually teaching his son drums now. And so that was 2002 or 2003. And now, still connected with them. To this day. We recorded another album, last year. And so, stuff happening back then, he was kind of setting the framework for, moving forward in life. So that kind of sort of gets you to high school, but if there's more stuff you want to ask, that's totally fine too.
No, it's interesting that I'm a drummer as well. So hearing you talk about a lot of those different things, I was very homeschooled, so I didn't get to experience the full length of everything that you got to experience. But it was really interesting to note that it looked like drumming or being a drummer was very much a part of your identity. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
That,
for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's very cool, because whenever I think of a drummer, being a drummer is a very cool identity to have, or at least just a characteristic.
Yeah.
They're I don't know, the drummer the drummer and society. I mean, there's branches of them, of course, but it's very interesting. If any of the bands that I think about, the drummers are always the one that I would pay attention to, even before I was a drummer already. So it's interesting. I don't know how many people who are listening to this, they are drummers and they're already nodding their head like, yep, I know exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So,
well, what's funny is like, I didn't really think drums was, I wanted to do it in playing in church and stuff, but like I was still all in broadcast at that point. Like I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. So it's so funny that if I would have, shifted my focus a little bit to, I want to play in a band. I had an opportunity to move to Nashville when I just started college, but I was going to have to quit school and hope that we would make it. And I was like, no, I'm not a risk taker. I'm not going to do that. So, it's funny, I'm still involved with drums now, even though I wouldn't consider me a professional. Obviously I feel like I'm very skilled, but I'm not touring. But I'm playing, I'm playing for the second time at our Celebrate Recovery tomorrow, and I play usually once or twice a month with our big Sunday morning congregation. And so, I'm playing regularly, but I wouldn't, I would never consider even touring, just because of where I am now with family. And I think back then, if I'd have made that decision to do that, who knows what life would have looked like now. And so all that to say, like, it's a passion, and I definitely find myself, I was that kid drumming on the desk where the teacher would have to constantly tell me to stop. So it was a huge part of my life. But what's so funny is I wasn't basing my future around it, if that makes sense, which is interesting. My son now is like, yeah, I want to be a drummer. I want to be a golfer. It's like back then I was solely focused on that broadcast, even though I probably would have had a better chance of being a drummer than in broadcast. Because, so many times sports broadcasters have played. And that was going to be the thing for me. Is like, man, I gotta know my stuff and be able to sell the fact that I didn't play, but holy cow, I know my information. I know all the ins and outs. So yeah, I agree. Drums was huge, but it wasn't the goal, which is funny.
Well, then that makes me very interested of what happened next after high school then. So what life change, perspective change, you're talking about broadcasting.
Yeah.
Where did your life go out of high school?
So went to the U of A, it's Arkansas here in Fayetteville, and jumped to the broadcast department, all in, and I jumped into everything. ESPN would come regularly for our football games. SEC is still, I would say, probably the biggest conference. Others would probably argue, Big Ten, or who knows who's in what now with all the realignment and moving. But so ESPN was always there. I got to work with CBS in the truck at a few KU basketball games and here for some Razorback basketball games. I was just saturating myself with as many opportunities as possible. So, I was in the BCM, which is Baptist Collegiate Ministries, as well at the U of A. But so much of what I was doing was doing the only call-in talk show on Thursday nights in Northwest Arkansas, talk about sports, just brushing up on everything. I was a huge fan. I would paint up for Hog football games. If I was there early enough, I got to go down on the front and be painted up with the Razor Hogs. And USC came my freshman year, and we camped out for almost the entire week to make sure we at least had the front row. And just sports I was all into sports and all in finding my way to be able to work with the teams, the television stations that were coming. And so I got to work in the booth a few times with ESPN and meet a couple of the broadcasters. And oddly enough, their attitudes were so poor. I was like, wow, if I ever do this, I hope I'm not like them. Got to work with Game Day when they came my junior year, which was awesome. Got to meet Desmond Howard. I ran a dish mic that same year for the South Carolina game and nearly was killed.
How?
So I don't remember the running back's name. I don't think it was Marcus Lattimore, but it was around that time frame. And basically, their running back, South Carolina's, came around the edge, the near side, and I'm holding the dish mic, and all of a sudden, I'm going to assume it was a defensive back, maybe a corner or something, just lunges at him, and I have to turn and go up on my toes, and they brush on my calves, like both of them. So you got to think the speed that collegiate athletes are moving. I just turned and went up on my heels and felt them brush. Had I not moved, they would have taken my legs out. So I had that near-death experience, and then the other time I was running a camera for our UATV in the south end zone, and we were playing Alabama. And this was back when Arkansas we were bad still. Like, we hadn't gotten Bobby Petrino yet, so we're just bad. And we're down, I'm pretty sure 49-0 or 42-0 or something. I have the footage of this somewhere because I pulled it off to save it. So John Parker Wilson is the quarterback, and I don't know how, we have them backed up to their 1-inch line. And so our student section's super loud, and I'm like, guys, we're losing 49-0, but okay. And so I'm just filming. I'm like, this is great footage. I'm right here. We finally have a stop. What if we get a safety and we finally, get rid of the goose egg on the scoreboard? And all of a sudden, John Parker Wilson rolls out, and he's right in front of me, and I sense it. I go, oh my gosh, I'm about to get just destroyed. So you see my camera drop, and I start to, shake and stand up, and you see this flash of white and red go by. And so basically what happened is two of our either linemen or linebackers or something, they both converged on him, and he just released the ball just to get rid of it, and they just smoked him. And so what happened is you see me come back up, I stand back up and they're, our guys are like high-fiving and mouthing off to him. And John Parker Wilson grabs the shoulder pad and points at the scoreboard. And then, I look over and the guy that was working for the Razorbacks, he's holding his camera up in two because they landed on top of him. And so, we ended up getting it was a late hit, roughing the passer kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was just the epitome of how stupid Arkansas was at the time, where we're losing horribly. We get a dumb penalty, we're mouthing off, and then all of a sudden we look and the camera's split in half. That was about how our season went. It was like cameras getting destroyed.
Fall of humanity right there.
Yeah, so, I mean, just those are my two near-death experiences while running stuff on the field. So college was all about sports. It just was. We ended up getting a non-NCAA sanctioned hockey team. So it was an intramural rec league hockey team. They would play at the Jones Center, which is it was actually just for families up about 20 minutes north of the U of A. And so they would play there, and I just got wind of it. And so all of my projects were, as much as I could anyways, around the hockey team. We had to produce commercials in between the student-produced content. I produced multiple hockey commercials. I'd get out there on hockey skates, because even though I couldn't play hockey, I still loved ice skating. And so I'm skating behind just putting together really cool stuff. And then got this idea in between my junior and senior year of college, I know I want to go into hockey broadcasting. That's the most I know. I know about that sport more than any other. If I'm going to get into anything, I've got to do hockey. So I put together a look live broadcast and then would edit. This is back when we still were on tape. So
Nice.
even though this is only 2008, we're not talking 20 years ago, still hadn't really reached the digital age yet. And so we would shoot 4 cameras on mini DV tapes. Ended up being 12 to 20 tapes every game. We'd do 2 games a weekend. I spent the summer before basically meeting with sponsors to try to get one polos so that the broadcasters could match. I would try to get cameras to be checked out from the U of A, but also Jones TV. Try to get DVDs, dual layer DVDs, so I could burn them to dual layer DVDs, which is long enough to then get it to the 2 TV stations that were going to show the games. Built a volunteer team of students to try to get gas money for the students, and also food, because in college, if you get gas and food covered, you're kind of probably going to be interested. And so, I made it look as professional as possible. When I look at it now, it's oh boy, if I knew now what I knew back, man, it would be so different. But would literally spend Friday night till about 1 or 2 in the morning dumping that from a deck to my hard drive. Saturday would try to edit it as much as I could. Saturday go film game 2, tear everything down, get home super late, try to dump the footage, go to church, and then spend all day Sunday editing both games. Back then, I only had Final Cut Express because I'm a poor college student, which had 0 multi-cam capability. So I'm basically layering all the camera tracks. But we shot intermission reports. We shot pre-game shows, interviews with the coaches and players afterwards. I knew what it needed to take to look real. I had a buddy who knew a little bit about Live Type, which no one knows what that program is, but that was the minimal graphic program associated with Apple back in the day. And so he'd send me a lower thirds. He'd send me graphics for commercial breaks. He'd send me the scoreboard across the top. We had every piece to the puzzle. They just weren't very good when you look at it. But did that for 8 games throughout the fall. I don't think we did anything in the spring just because it didn't work out with school for me. And so, it was all sports, thinking that's where where I was going to go. That's what I wanted to do. And so I had reached out to Ralph Strangis, who was the play-by-play guy for the Stars, and sent him my demo reel. Showed him that I was either doing color commentation or commentating because I knew the most about hockey, and then I had a play-by-play guy who knew nothing about it, but I needed somebody to take the lead. And what was so funny is the very first game, in hockey, basically the prime shooting location is called the slot. And very first game, he's like, "Hey, passes the puck to the top of the key." I'm like, "No, it's not the key. It's the slot. The key is basketball." But then if he couldn't make it because he was doing something with the baseball team or football, then I would slide over to play-by-play, and then I'd bring whatever Razorback hockey player that had been suspended for fighting. He'd come up and do the color for me. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun, a lot of work. And then to this, the moment I graduated, no one did it. And I think now they have a guy who like live streams it through YouTube with a single camera kind of thing. But anyways, that was my goal. All throughout this time, still playing drums at different churches. What's funny is I had busted my tail all 3 years of college, and then my last year it was all trying to finish out the broadcast courses, and I had nothing but electives. So like I did beginning golf, even though I've been playing golf since 6th grade. So I literally like twice a week I'm hitting the range as class, which was just money. And our final was going and playing a 9-hole course. I paid probably too much money for that when you think about it. At the time, I was like, I need some kind of a break. I've busted it. But yeah, I was doing drums, doing golf, but it was all about sports. And one elective I did take was personal finance management. And I'm not sure how old you are, but we were sitting in that class the day that I think all of our futures changed, when the Dow crashed from the housing bubble, coming, basically just falling out. And the professor didn't say a word. He just turned it on the, smart screen. And we just all sat there in silence listening to the commentary. And we're like, are we going to go to depression? Like, what does this mean for us? And so when you're talking about what shaped me to where I am now, it was probably that, because I spent the rest of the fall and early spring reaching out to every hockey team from juniors to pro. Ralph with Dallas, he was like, "Yeah, you got potential. You got to start small." That's how we all, you're not going to get a job with a pro team. It's like, I know. Long story short, one team reached out to me after all my emails and just said, "Hey, we might have an option for you, but you're going to have to come and volunteer first, and then we'll see kind of what happens." And it was in Fargo, North Dakota. And I had a little knowledge of Fargo, North Dakota, but all of it was negative. One, the Razorback hockey coach at the time, Patrick Forsyth, he had played for the Fargo Flames before they went bankrupt. So that negative, connotation associated with Fargo's hockey team. Already they went bankrupt. And then I had watched, and I feel like it got super cold, lots of snow, so then it's hard to travel, and then all of that warms up and it melts and floods. I'm like, okay, I have to move to Fargo, North Dakota, to a team that might not survive. I have to find a job. I have to learn how to travel in that kind of weather. I'm not a risky guy. I said that earlier. I don't take risks. I don't know what I'm going to do. I knew I didn't want to go into news. Just that wasn't my passion. I just was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I'd been attending fellowship off and on with a buddy of mine when I wasn't playing drums at other churches. I saw they were doing a little bit of video, but just not much. And so I reached out and just said, you guys need to volunteer? Do you need any help? Didn't hear anything back. A month later, I reached out again. And that day I had an email back, a phone call, and then an interview set up. And very quickly, they hired me part-time before I graduated as a producer. They needed to produce a DVD series for an upcoming in-house produced curriculum for the entire church, from infants all the way up to adults. And I knew how to do that from all my time of, authoring DVDs for the hockey. So, I was hired probation period because, obviously what we do is very creative, but all I had was on-air experience. I mean, I had editing experience, but I didn't have like life change stories. Like I had packages, what, the news called it, but I definitely would not call those creative, because you all lead with information, lead with that, all that kind of stuff, what news is all about. Yeah. As opposed to the way I shoot and edit live change stories now, it's like, how can I make this be a mini movie? How can I make this feel like a short film? And so I jumped on, shot those videos it was called Draw Near, the curriculum, built the DVDs, and then basically there was one video a few months in where it was a creative piece about promoting a Northwest Arkansas wide worship night that fellowship was going to host, and I did this creative video, and immediately the probation period was removed. And I mean, there's a lot more to that story, but that's where things shifted to where I am now, because all that effort of working with ESPN, working with CBS, doing the hockey, nothing came to fruition out of it. And it wasn't from a lack of I feel like I tried really hard. I feel like I made connections. As a college student, it's just all about networking. And so that's where I go. I know no matter how hard I was going to try, it wasn't going to matter, because that wasn't God's plan. So, and all throughout this time, no one knows. I still have not shared my story. No one knows that sometimes I'm squinting to read the prompter, when I'm having to do the news desk because it's not super big. Yeah, I mean, and here's the crazy thing, doctors said don't do it. Well, what do you think I did in college? I was playing intramural basketball down at the Hyper, playing intramural softball with my buddy, trying to be careful, but still, that's still a risk. I'm still taking risk. At that point, don't have a relationship. There's no other, not that it was a selfish mentality, but I just didn't have that, hey, you got to provide for somebody. Hey, you've got be sure to protect your vision for your kids. None of that was there. So I guess if something would have happened, sure, it'd have been awful, but no one else was really affected, if that makes sense. And I don't know if that's a bad way to look at it, but I would go and play, and I'd be careful. There's a video on YouTube, which is so funny that I can find this, but we had a 3-on-3 UATV basketball game. Basically 3 people that played it versus another 3. And, I'm playing, and I'm one of the taller guys out there, and I am nowhere near the key, nowhere near the basket. I'm staying out because I'm not going to get elbowed, because they're playing pretty aggressively. And funny I have zero depth perception, but yet I'm shooting some threes and making them, shooting some twos and making them. And doctors would always say, how can you catch a football? How can you shoot a basketball? You have no depth perception. And I think just over time, it's just once I shoot and figure out how hard I need to follow through, and I just kind of compensate for it. But you watch, you go, dude, why are you not under the basket? You're one of the tallest players. And it's well, no one knew, but that's why. It's because I was. But it's so funny to see that video on YouTube. I showed it to the kids, and it's just so funny. But yeah, I mean, just keeping that story private, just because I didn't want anybody to think I wasn't capable. I wanted to go into a very visual field, and didn't want to have anybody think, okay, I mean, he's a risk, we can't do this. So I didn't tell anybody at fellowship either. To I don't know, I'll probably be 2 or 3 years in, no one knew. There were a select few buddies that I was really close with that I would share my story with, that I felt like I could trust them. But I think enough of the fear, what are people going to say? What do they think? Is this going to affect my future? Enough of the lies, keeping it quiet. So anyways, that's how things shifted from broadcast to what I'm doing now.
Man, that's incredible that God redeemed that. This would be the one job that it just makes no sense, but that's exactly what God had for you.
There's more to that, but I want to not jump too far ahead, because we got to get to the point where I start telling, and that's enough. I think there's a point where God finally said, enough is enough. You've got to tell your story. So anyways, we'll get to that if you have any.
That's however that transitions into that. That's awesome. But realistically, just my next question would be, how did the redemption of the gospel change your perspective, I guess? Because watching it kind of shift throughout the college years into the position that you have, was that something that happened overnight, or was it something that happened over years?
Yeah, so there was, like I said, throughout, I don't know really how often and how many times I would, but I would be angry at God. I'd ask why. Um, I don't understand why, but I never questioned whether he was real. I think a lot of times people will think bad things happen, and man, he's not real. He's not real. Why would a good God let bad things happen? And nowhere in Scripture does it say that. There's nowhere in Scripture does it say, hey, if you're a follower of Christ, everything is going to be perfect. You're going to have all the money you need. You're going to have great health. Just the laundry list of what we think is good. Nowhere does it say that. So that's where I never questioned, was he real? Was he real in my life? But there were times where I was like, why did you do this to me? Like, what did I do? What did I do to deserve this? And so, man, I would say what changed was, and this is what's so funny is like in my role as telling stories a lot of times, that's not the only kind of videos we produce at Fellowship, but man, life change stories, that's how we traffic. That's how we show what's going on. How is Fellowship healthy? It's the life change. And people would always be, I don't think I can do this. I'm so nervous. And I'd say, listen, if only one person hears your story, it matters. Your story matters. You need to tell it because it's God working through you. So I'm telling people this, but then on the backside, I'm not willing to tell anybody because of fear. The same exact fear that I'm telling people, hey, don't have, I myself am having. Now, obviously, my wife knows. So, I didn't, this isn't like we get married in 2010 and then in 2016, I tell her, no, she knew very early on. But basically, this is where the one person at Fellowship knew, and it was probably 2012, 2013, something like that. I'm walking through our foyer, and I see one of our key leaders on staff named Lamar. I see him. I go to walk over to him, not seeing who he's talking to, and all of a sudden the gentleman turns, and I instantly know who it is. It's that doctor who saw me in 1995 to tell me I had a detached retina. And he looks at me, and Lamar goes, "Hey," and I'm not going to say his name because I don't know if we try to protect anonymity for some of our global workers, but says his name, and I go, "Yeah, it's good to see you again." He goes, "I remember you. You had this. And Lamar just kind of looks at me like, saying, "What? Why am I just hearing about it?" So anyways, had a great conversation with Lamar, and so Lamar knew. And I bring that up because it was instrumental to when I think God finally said, okay, enough's enough. You've been doing this for 6 years. You haven't told anybody. Or actually 7. That's funny. I just realized that I started in April of 2009, and in 2016 is when this happened. So 7's a number of completion. I just now realized that. Maybe God said, you've had 7 years. This is it. But basically, I just started having horrific pain, whether I had my prosthetic in or not. And so started seeing my doctors that I regularly see for glaucoma, and that's the other stuff we'll talk about where like I'm not out of the woods, but and they're like, yeah, we think it's mechanical, which means they think it's the prosthetic. So I drive to Tulsa to go see those folks. They're like, yeah, we can't vault it anymore without it not moving at all. Like, we don't think it's the prosthetic. So after multiple doctor's visits and other things, basically determined I have to have a full enucleation, which is basically what they're saying is it's like getting a splinter in your body. At a certain point, that body knows it's an enemy and it needs it to get out. So that's where the pain happens. It's trying to force it out. Well, you can't force an eye out. And so, I mean, it's affecting me. I'm in so much pain. I'm driving to church, punching my steering wheel. I'm in so much pain. And that, again, that's where the bitterness, the anger, like, God, seriously, what more could you do to me than you've already done? And so there was one day I'm sitting in a meeting. Lamar's office is directly across the hall. And I have to go tell him what's about to happen because I'm going to be in a patch for, I think it was 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 months. I can't hide that. And I go into his office. I just sit down and I say, hey, Lamar, this is what's going on. They have to do this. I don't know how I'm going to hide this. And he goes, listen, either you're going to tell Mickey or I'm going to tell Mickey. And Mickey's our directional leader. So basically kind of our CEO, if you want to call it. And I'm like, no, we don't need to do that. He goes, no, we're going to walk in his office right now. And either you're telling him or I'm telling him. And that's like the fear of like, oh my gosh, what is he going to say? Is he going to get mad at me that for 6-7 years I haven't told them the truth? I haven't lied. I just haven't been, up front. And anyways, they were very gracious. He was very gracious. just said, hey, we have the utmost trust and faith in you and your work ethic and all this kind of stuff. And so I let in 3 or 4 other key trusted leaders to that story. I pulled them in my office. I just said, hey, and this is what's funny is there's one guy, Chip Jackson, who I really put as like the guy that's helped me gain the confidence to tell my story. He was sitting in my office just behind me in here, and as I'm telling him this, he goes, and this actually initially caught me off guard, but he goes, man, it is amazing to see God using you through your handicap or your disability. And I go, whoa. I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, whoa, I'm not disabled. What are you talking about? I don't have a handicap. What? Whoa. Don't use those words. That's not me. And then I'm like, wait, yeah, it is. It's true. And so he just said, it's amazing for the people of Fellowship, where my story, I've been open to tell my story now. Fellowship, we haven't done it yet, but he said, it's amazing that the eyes of Fellowship, people with 2 eyes are seeing the story of Fellowship through just one. And so, Chip and a lady named Beth Davies and my boss now, Russ, I mean, just a bunch of people were just so just behind me that, I obviously had to go through with it. We did it, and my boss ended up being at the hospital, which was funny. That's a whole other story where the doctor who did it came out and his mannerisms made my family think that I died. So it was kind of funny. There's a funny story to it. But anyways, that happened. And so I go the 4 or 5, whatever that. It was October 7th of 16. And I finally am fitted for my prosthetic. I think it was early, maybe February or March. And it is the most uncomfortable I have ever felt in my entire life. I can't wear it at all. And now I can't take it out. And because like back then I had a smaller, my eye was in there, was smaller. It was all black. The pupil was fully dilated, had a cataract, but it was still an eye. So I would put a hat on and, walk down to the store and kind of, try to block people from seeing me if they knew me. But at least I could get some relief at night, because it just, by the end of the day, I was just miserable. And so at this point, I don't have an option. I'm going to work. I can't open my eye. It's just irritated, bothering me. And I'm like, what is going on? So thankfully, I've been able to find 2 doctors here that are kind of watching me over, my health. One for the glaucoma and the more internal stuff. And then another, his brother, oddly enough, just for like optometry, but also just kind of health of my eye as well. The kind of this tandem thing. And that doctor, the optometrist, he looked in there and he's like, yeah, man, you've got GPC really badly. Let me do some research for you. So he comes back and just says, like, you have 4 issues. You've got dry eye, chronic dry eye. You've got allergies. You've got GPC. And I think he said at that time it was like a level 5 out of 5. And he said, I think you're allergic to the prosthetic material. So when I hear that, I'm like, I've been wearing it since age 5. This is 2016. So I guess at that point, that's 8 years ago. So I'm 29. So for 24, 25 years, I've been irritated because I'm allergic to the prosthetic material. You're like, what? So he's like, hey, I think you should reach out to your ocularists and see, is there another material they can use or another option? A curing process I've read about. And I reach out to our, and let me tell you, I am so grateful for my ocularist, because when I tell people, they are like, no, which eye? Like, they don't believe it because of how good they are. So I'm so grateful. But basically, I mentioned this to the ocularist, and he was like, yeah, we can try it. Okay, let's do it. I'm like, what does that mean? The prosthetics last for about 5 to 6 years, and they're super expensive. What is this going to lessen the life? He's like, no, we'll just boil it for an hour. I'm like, okay. Sounds doable. Let's do it. And so I go down there. Thankfully, they come to Fayetteville every so often. And dude, it was night and day. I'm not making this up. Like I am a guy that fixates on problems or fixate on things that I feel. I don't think I was making this up, but I'm telling you, the moment that he put it in after it was boiled for an hour, oh my gosh, it was night and day. It was amazing. I was like, wow. And then for the next until we either had to change the shape or I had to get a new one, there were times that I didn't feel it in there. So, you know, where I say that was probably the most defining moment of my life, even though obviously coming to Christ was the first, but I think God said, you no longer can not tell your story. You're telling people their story matters. You're telling people that it shows me in them. It shows my influence in them and my work in them and all of this. You're telling them all these things, and yet you don't believe that in yourself. I think that's what it was. I think he said enough's enough. Now, doctors are like, no, it was this. And the oculist is, well, I can think it was this. I feel like I think it was him saying it's enough. And so, you know, and where I bring Chip back up is, you know, I tell this story, and there's these things called foxholes, which I think are so great. They're all across the nation, and I think we have something called the Training Center, where we're all about resourcing other churches and bringing other churches together, all the leaders together. And so he said, hey, would you come down to Southeast Florida? We've got a foxhole down there. Would you come document it? I'm like, absolutely. South Florida. Where are we going? It's more like northwest Florida, sorry, but it's the Southeast foxhole. And he's like, oh, we're going to go in February. I'm like, the beach in February? I mean, okay, sure. So I go down there. I've got all my camera gear, thinking I'm just highlighting what's going on. And on the drive there, he's like, hey, Clebe, have you figured out that I have you down here for more than just filming? I go, no, I don't know what you're talking about. So anyways, throughout that foxhole, I shared my story twice. And to that point, that was the first time I'd really shared the depth of my story. And all those pastors or guys that were in the marketplace that were a part of that were just same thing. Super, wow, cannot believe how God is using you. And so that's where I've kind of started to gain this confidence that, hey, I can tell my story and the world's not going to come to an end. And so, man, that's just where I've seen my life. Not full potential is a funny way to say it, but I really feel like my ability to show God's power being displayed through me is finally opening up. That's what I learned, is just that, man, me hiding this is preventing him from coming out. This doesn't make sense. A guy who's got glaucoma in his only good eye, seeing 20, 25, 20, 30, depending upon how his yearly visit goes, is leading a video production team where we're producing, like I just produced 12 videos, life change story videos in the last month or so. And so, that doesn't probably make sense in the business world. When I finally started sharing with some leaders that I meet with in the business world, in the marketplace, one was at Walmart. I just shared it with him, and I was like, yeah, I feel like if I was anywhere else, I probably would have gotten let go. And they're like, yeah, they'd have probably found a way to get rid of you. So I know God has had me here at Fellowship for a reason. I know he didn't have me go into sports for a reason. There's tons of topics I could bring up about sports where I know I'd have said something and either gotten fired or basically even forced to resign, kind of thing, because of Christian faith and other things. I'm very opinionated when it comes to stuff. But it just, in those moments of like, working for a church, why are finances so tough sometimes? Why are kids picking on me? Why can I not get a job in video or broadcast, all that kind of stuff. And then you look back and it's like, well, God had you at Fellowship so that when this happened, you had people around you to support you. Now, obviously my wife supports, that's not to say without her, she's been huge, because that was always my fears. Like, is another person going to be willing to look at and not feel grossed out? Or like, even for me, this is 8 years now almost since I've had my surgery, and I have a hard time looking in the mirror without my prosthetic in still. So, and she was having to clean me, clean the wound and all that kind of stuff. And I can't even look at it 8 years ago or 8 years later. So she's a huge support. I finally ended up having to tell my kids, because I was sitting at the dining room table. My son's here trying to fist pump me and I'm ignoring him. And my daughter goes, Dad, that's pretty unkind of you to just leave Colin hanging like that. I go, what do you mean, honey? She goes, well, he's trying to fist pump you. I go, I go, okay. Probably need to tell you guys. So, anyway, yeah, I mean, it's just God uses all of us in our uniqueness, basically. And I'm very unique when it comes to this. And I'm very blessed that technology is where it is now. Because like we shoot A7S III with that autofocus tracking. And so I can trust that I can see the square. I know it's in focus. And if I move or something or they move, it's going to stay in focus. I've only had one video where one of the cameras was out of focus. And I don't blame that on my eye. But that's always been my fear. Is like, oh my gosh, what happens if I come back and everything's out of focus because I didn't see it? No, what's funny is I was supposed to have a person interviewing. They didn't show up, so I had to do the interview. I set the cameras up, had one camera here straight on and a really cool creative side angle. The dude kept leaning forward out of the focal point, out of the depth of field. And I get back, I'm like, oh my gosh, every shot going out of focus. That was before we had the autofocus tracking. That was on the A7S2s. And so, anyways, yeah, I mean, I'm very blessed to have the gear that allows me to do this. Like I said, I get to play drums all the time here. I teach drum students. One of them being my son, which is so cool. He's 10 and he's just played in our FSM room 2 weeks ago with clicks and loops. And I mean, I'm getting to do all these things that I'm very passionate about in the midst of, what I'm lacking. But when it comes to drums, like, man, of all the music to be able, or all the instruments to be able to choose from, I chose the one where all I got to do is hear it and I know it. Like my wife will comment, she's like, how do you remember that song? Or how can you hear that song in the middle of a store? Or how did you know the beat to that song and start? I'm just like, I hear it pretty easily. I just hear it. So, I mean, just all those things he's brought into my life throughout I can see his handiwork and just, how he's still moving and working through me. And that's not to say that at some point vision gets worse. I mean, I'm seeing a doctor every three months to try to stay on top of it. But I'm only 38, and usually glaucoma is something that hits, older folks. Like that is, man, I wish they had like a high mileage or, some kind of a rewards program to this office I go to, because I've been going there since I was 9. So for 29 years, you'd think I'd built up some awards or something. But every time I go in there, I'm about the only person under 70. So that's how it's always been. So I have probably a long road ahead of me unless Jesus decides to come back. But
that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So who knows what that looks like? But all that to say, I'm very blessed and just with what I've got going on in life, telling stories, capturing them, and now being willing to open up and share my story to where it might give somebody the confidence to share theirs, or it might attack somebody. And I feel like a sense of relief that I'm not carrying that burden anymore of what if somebody finds out? What if, and so to share on this, I don't know how, I'm hoping you have millions of subscribers, but who knows? Yeah. So,
maybe by the point this one releases, that'd be awesome.
How many people are going to hear this? But this is the most publicly I've shared my story. 2015, I would have gone very different with my story. There would have been bits and pieces, but you wouldn't have, I mean, first, you wouldn't have heard, obviously, him forcing the change, but it'd have been very different. Usually what I'd say is, I've had some pretty significant eye problems in my life. And I would leave it at that. And if people ask, I'd still kind of dance around it. But yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that it was in his timing when he forced it, because I think any other time it probably would have been really harder than it already was. But if I'd have been in high school and had to do it, I mean, I feel like that'd have been very different. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that brings up any other questions.
Well, I've got a few shorter questions, but then I'll have to wrap it up. But you're a movie person, I'm assuming, correct? You enjoy movies?
Some, yes. So yes.
Some, yes. Would you say you're more of a book person, or if you could pick one?
I would just say I'm definitely not. You would think in a video field, you would, you would like, oh yeah, I like all these, like, I like action films and some one-off like Lord of the Rings type things and pirates. And, almost all the Pixars, but so yeah, I mean, I'm not a reader, that's for sure. I'm forced to read, and that's when I read. I am for sure more visually watching something, but I'm probably still more going to watch sports than I am movies. But sure, if you got a movie question, let's see how I respond. And
well, it's along those lines. But if we could make a movie about your life, what would you want it to be called?
Oh wow, that's a really good question. This is the first thing that came to my mind. I don't know if it's the Lord or if it's cheesy, but Eye of the Beholder.
Ooh, I like that. That draws attention, that's for sure.
Well, it makes you, like, my whole thing when I do a video, I want to create an intro that draws people in, that hooks people in. So when you think Eye of the Beholder, what does that even mean? What is he talking about? Well,
figure out.
Yeah, exactly. Watch the movie and you'll figure it out.
That's perfect. No, you nailed that. That is really good.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd, so as soon as you said that, all of my nerd tendencies kicked in with like the word beholder. I was like, ooh, there's a lot of things you could go with that route. So
I know. Spielberg. Anybody? I love maybe explosions in my movie. So if we want to, I guess is that Abrams? Is he the big explosion guy? Or
Abrams, and then Bruckheimer. He's the Transformer guy.
If they want to do a story about that, let me know. And I've never blown anything up, but
not yet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I've only got 2 more questions then.
Okay.
One of them would be, how would you encourage someone who is scared or intimidated in sharing their story? You kind of touched on that, but what would you say if they were right in front of you?
Yeah, man. Well, first I would tell them it's going to be okay. I promise. I didn't think it was, but it's going to be okay. And I would just say, hey, start with telling somebody you trust. Because, I would say you probably can't trust everybody. So I wouldn't just tell them initially, like, oh yeah, it's fine. Just blast it on social media, tell everybody. But I would tell some trusted people that will be able to walk through you with that, whatever your story is, whatever that issue is that you're afraid to share. And know that as long as you're a believer, obviously, you have to have this in your mind. But God's going to use it. Like, he wouldn't have you in the spot, the position, walking through whatever. He wouldn't have you in that if it wasn't part of his plan. And he didn't want to use you in that. And so that's what I wish I would have believed before. Not that I wasn't told that by my parents. Obviously, they were very uplifting, but I believed the enemy saying, oh, you're not going to matter if you say this, or people are going to disown you and not want to be your friend and think you're weird if you say this. They're going to think you're not capable. And man, maybe that would have been true. Maybe some people would have made fun of me or dropped, but at that point it's like, well, then they don't need to be in your life. And so, man, if I'm sitting across the coffee table, somebody's opened up and just said, hey, I'm afraid to tell my story, I just say, listen, if you don't trust me, I get it. You don't know me very well, but man, find somebody. They're going to be there with you. God's with you. Don't forget that. And somebody will be impacted by it. You don't know when, but the more you keep it in, it's only going to weigh you down and not let you get to your full potential. And so I tell them, hey, just be willing to find that person that's going to walk through it with you. That's what I would say probably.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, that's encouraging. That's for sure. I appreciate how vulnerable you were and honest about how long it took for you to tell your story. Yeah. And watching the change play out. Like, this is the second conversation I've ever had with you. And so watching that all play out, like, you are not the only person that has waited that long to share your story. You know what I mean? And so like, that would be such an encouragement to anybody listening to this, of just being like, maybe they're 80 years old and they still haven't. Yeah. Awesome. If you're still breathing, you still have a chance. And like, you never know who your story is going to impact and challenge and encourage someone. And it's just like wildfire. It just spreads. And I know that's what you do with your job as well. And so I already know it works.
It does. And I could feel like, I asked the guys in my foxhole to be praying for me today, just because I didn't know where you were going to take the story. I didn't know if the Lord was going to lead me to go full in, but I kind of had this feeling I was going to have to. And so those guys that I was able to open up to a little bit more publicly, it was still a very private, thing where we're band of brothers together, trusted leaders kind of thing. And what we say there generally is private. But those guys are praying for me right now. I didn't tell them when it was. I just said, hey, would you pray for today, I think I might be publicly more than I ever have sharing my story. And so I think that's what I've got now is you find those people that have your back. And I think that helps when you feel like you've got it, you're doing it all alone. And that's not to negate a spouse, because obviously your spouse is going to love you no matter what, but your spouse is going to love you no matter what. So with that, it's kind of like, well, wait, that doesn't mean I'm going to keep my job. That doesn't mean my buddies are going to still want to hang out with me, that kind of thing. And so, man, finding those people that had my back, just, it helps. It does. Anybody who feels like they're isolated and alone in something, it's going to be hard. And so finding out that you're not alone. So if somebody watching this, oh man, if he was able to do it, man, maybe I can do it. And that's not to say that immediately you're going to feel that confidence, but start with one, and then it'll hopefully turn into a few. And then, I still don't know why God had me go through this. There's no family history. There's no trauma. Like anytime I see a new doctor, like, okay, so tell me the trauma you had. No trauma. No. Were you hit? Were you dropped as a baby? I'm like, no, seriously, no trauma. They don't believe it. And so I don't know why God had me go through this particular thing. Why does he have people go through cancer? Why does he have people go through loss of life, of loved one? We just don't know. Ultimately, it's for his story. It's to proclaim his glory and draw others in. And so hopefully, obviously this is not to bring glory to Kyle, oh, wow, can you believe no, it's like, look what God's doing through him. What else can God do through me? What can God do through you? What can God do through all these other stories that we share? Because, Paul did it in Timothy. He started connecting with people by telling his story because it's what was going to resonate with them. It was Timothy, wasn't it? When he starts saying like, hey, I was the worst of the worst. I was actually persecuting you. And look at where I am now. And they could resonate with that. The stories matter because people can connect. So, yeah.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then technically my last question that I have for you is, is there anything else you sense that God wants you to share on behalf of anybody who'd be listening to this?
Nothing comes to mind, which is interesting because I feel like I don't ever stop talking. That's why I was like, I'm going to go into broadcasting. I can talk. But yeah, I guess if I were to say anything, if you're questioning why God, not necessarily questioning is there a God, but questioning why, if you can in those moments, just know there is a why, you just might not know what it is. And when you can, just lean on him, lean on another brother or sister in Christ. But there will probably be those moments of why. It could be material things. Why did we lose our home in a tornado? We had some significant tornadoes here back in May. Why did we lose a loved one? Why did I have this health issue? That kind of thing. In the moment, it's hard. And I was doing it. I'm in pain. I'm punching the steering wheel, driving to work. Why, God? And once you get through it, even though I'm not fully at the end, the end I feel like is eternity. But I'm at least through the pain. I'm at least through the surgery. Just, man, if there's anything I can leave with somebody with, just he's there. And just, if at all costs, just try to trust on him, lean on him, and then try to find a way to use that in a way that maybe, I don't view that I lost years because I was still using my gifts that he's given me. Music,
yeah, you didn't stop.
Stories. I just wasn't telling my story. But who knows what difference I could have made if I was more open early on. So I would just say, be willing to go there with somebody, but also just don't lose hope, don't lose faith. I think it's okay to question why, but then try to listen for the answers. And I'm not speaking from experience. I'm sure when I was young and I was 9, 10, 11, 12, I probably didn't hear the answers in my young faith. But I certainly was asking the question why, and I think I'm seeing the answers now. So that's what I would say is just don't lose faith in him. I can attest that he's real because of just what's going on in my life. So that's what I would say.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I have a running joke that I started back when we started this podcast, and I always end the podcast with a high five.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
So pick a number between 1 and 10 for me.
Okay, 7.
7. All right, so we're going to count down from 7. And when we get down to the bottom, we're going to high five the camera to make it look like we're high fiving each other.
Hey, that's great. I love it.
All right, fantastic. All right, so 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's Infinite Story. If it resonated with you, send it to someone you think would be blessed by it. If you would like to share your story, please reach out to us at infiniteideas.studio. You never know how far the impact of your story can reach. Take care now.